So this video is just going to be my first serious video in the AI series that I'm going to go over. Pretty much what I want with this one is to kind of talk about some of how information relates to AI systems, specifically with how a computer program or a piece of software can even begin to functionally learn in a sense, because it's not traditional learning like you would think of with people in some sense, or I'm sure there's, you know, the the amount of ways to think about it are endless and how people learn and how machine learns and where there's overlap and where there's not. But it's at least a topic I want to explore and just figure out kind of for myself as much as to maybe share some novel ideas and bring about new thinking. So I've put together a series of questions that I just asked myself, and I'm going to do my best to answer those, and then hopefully there's some enlightening answers in there and things that will spark your interest as well. One thing to say is I am not an AI expert. All this stuff is just simply from my own curiosity and things that I really just pop into my head throughout the day. So I might be saying things that are partially or not factual. I'll try to stay away from sensationalized opinions or just kind of bigger news topics that maybe are blown out of proportion. I do want to kind of stay as grounded as possible in this. Ultimately, though, my approach is going to be much more on the philosophical side and ethical side than a truly technical side. And as I'm bringing up technical things, it's I'd rather just kind of make a broader point. So we'll go with kind of what it means to learn and what kind of started the revolution of artificial intelligence and why it maybe seems so different now than potentially in the past with just different softwares or algorithms. And it seems to me that kind of things changed once. From what I've been able to tell, there was kind of a paper that came out a few years ago called "All You Need Is Attention," and in it, there's always been kind of an issue and somewhat of a problem with trying to find the relevant information or data in a certain field or topic. And so, in the case of artificial intelligence, um, trying to get it to focus on one thing was very hard, and trying to get it to, um, train towards a certain goal that was even useful to humans was a hard goal, because I mean, you can put different models against each other and they can come up with noise generation. And I mean, you see that with image, right? The images that are generated, a lot of that is, they're building patterns out of noise. Um, but the difference between a pattern that makes sense to people and doesn't is the the margins of error are pretty slim there when you factor in complete randomness and all the possibilities out there. So you can arrange the pixels in 1,000 different ways, or yeah, almost endless ways, but only one way is going to make the Mona Lisa or a painting that makes sense to us. So it's very hard problem conceptually for artificial intelligence to solve. And so I think, um, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to train these models and stuff now, but I think that paper was one of the kind of key factors to training models that could, um, like providing a method that could basically uh, yield results that were useful to people in a significant way. The next question I kind of asked myself was, will an artificial intelligence be able to train? So I guess I should back up a little bit. When it comes to training, a lot of the training now is done with data sets that are, I mean, there are so far all the useful, like the public models at least, are taken. The data is taken from the web. It's taken from things people have created. So it's using information that is generated by people. So it kind of gets, in a sense, a taste of what people want, and it'll give it back to you. And so that's why you see a lot of potentially, uh, you can prompt these models in such a way to get out outputs that if you're not careful with the data or where you're collecting the data from, you can get some interesting results put back out into your results. So in that sense, basically, you're going to be always kind of taking from something, at least for now, taking with something of human origin that has some sort of almost intelligence baked in already to kind of guide these models. And so having that intelligence really is a kind of almost a benchmark or some way of really guiding these models. And so when they're trained, they're given, um, all the data from the web, like I said, and then they're also trained a lot of times manually with people kind of going through the data and pointing out with a human touch kind of what is relevant or what identifying different things. So for in images and image recognition, a lot of it was trained with people going through the image, circling or cropping out the bicycle, 100,000 times or whatever, and kind of labeling the data in a way that's relevant to people. And so to kind of kickstart these models. So while it looks impressive on the output, um, all the input was originally it's almost like the work was front loaded by people. So whether it was people taking the images or generating the text through books and libraries, all the information was already there, and it's just being kind of um, sorted through and given this very clear um, guiding hand to basically find what's relevant. So I think with going forward, there is this interesting idea that I've been having that it's a bit of a tangent, but uh, so with genetics, I've heard theories where um, you basically have, so for how do I even describe this? So when you start with this, for instance, like a wolf, we'll use um, genetically, a wolf is very maximized. It has kind of the genes to express in many different ways, and so I've been thinking of genes in terms of information a little bit. And when you have, so you have this max pool of information you're drawing from. And so then when you breed a dog, or I mean, in this case, wolves, you can start to breed out selective traits. And so that's how you get, eventually a Chihuahua from a wolf. It's going to take a lot of generations and cycles and evolutions, but eventually all the DNA for the Chihuahua, is originally in the wolf. So you have these like common ancestors that um, have a lot of adaptability and uh, and flexibility, and um, the end result of what is stored in that being can be vastly different from what it originally started with. And so I kind of had that idea in relation to artificial intelligence, where potentially we might be pulling from, in a sense, the I don't know how to say it in a good way, but we might be pulling from kind of the genetic prime pool of information as far as kind of everything humans have produced up until this point, whether it be images, text, or audio, or anything like that. And so when we're training these models, we are basically pulling from that and taking out smaller subsections that emphasize different parts of this data to really exemplify them and point them out. And so it's not that we're creating anything new necessarily, but that we are just creating, or we're we're holding up different aspects and pointing them out and making extremes out of them, I guess, in some sense. And so it's the, for instance, with one of these image generations, when we pull out the images, it's kind of the distilled version of 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 other images. And so it's, you know, it was taking from all the available information and all the possibilities of what's been done and kind of finding the most middle ground and pleasing aspect to people, or that people find interesting. Um, and so, with that in mind, I've kind of, that led me to more thoughts of, okay, well, if that's the case, it's like, because to me, it seems like no matter what, something is always, at least for now, and it might be different in the future and I can't envision it, but for now, it always takes some kind of human input, whether you're, or creativity or something, where, you're either taking from data that people have made and created and compiling that, or even training the models with human attention and what is interesting to humans manually, just by marking different um, or forget the term, but basically just labeling the data manually. So that kind of led me to my other question was, will artificial intelligence be able to train itself? Because you do see a lot of kind of reinforcement learning models or training models where you'll have two artificial intelligence kind of do a task against each other in a sort of competitive environment. And so they get virtually rewarded essentially for, winning. And over time, they'll kind of sharpen each other in a sense. In that case, that it's still very much the people are guiding, the people making these models and training them are very much guiding incentives. They have a lot of input in towards what is, you know, the desired outcome and what, constitutes a good outcome even. So um, a lot of the parameters for these training situations are set up. Um, one thing so to have an AI train another AI, it doesn't seem, it would be interesting to see where that comes from, because I think no matter what you do, it's going to have its origin in people somehow. Otherwise, most likely would be my guess is that um, specifically because we are training AI to be producing results that are interesting to humans or useful to humans or whatever, that um, since there is these infinite possibilities of things, and you only have so much attention or even need for information, a lot of the information in the universe is actually just completely irrelevant. And so you get to the point where if an artificial intelligence is training another one without any sort of human parameters, I think you'll just get into kind of the weeds, as it were, or just this completely random breakdown of information and noise. And so without constant um, input in some sense from people, kind of inspiring the system or putting some sort of guiding principles or new information to the system, I I suspect things will devolve into kind of sort of an entropic noise that just is completely meaningless to people. So, um, yeah, so that kind of was interesting to me because, people think that somehow AI is going to eclipse them or eclipse humanity in some sense. But I think, if anything, or if it became sentient or anything like that, or it kind of developed its own will, it would it would instantly go outside the parameters of what even humans care about or are interested in, and then it would just probably live there or something. Um, it's a very human, even mindset to think that a computer would want to take over the world or something. That's just everyone's inner power fantasy coming out and fear. But yeah. So uh, yeah, that was kind of my follow up question to that was, will things that AI learn outside of any human guidance or input even be interesting to us? And I suspect probably not. It's like you don't care what kind of algorithms are running in your software on your desktop at home. You don't, you know, care about the algorithms and I mean a few people do, but most don't care about, the signals that are going on through your cell phones and, across through the air and your Wi-Fi signals and all that stuff. So there's a lot of data out there that's just I would say the majority of it that people are either unaware of and also don't care about. So I think a lot of the learnings that aren't directly involved with human needs, wants, or interests would just go overlooked in a lot of sense. I guess that takes us to um, what is relevant data. I think relevant data is, I mean, we've seen it here. It's things like Chat GPT, becoming the fastest growing uh, user base in history, basically in the course of 3 or 4 days or something. With the most new users. Um, you can tell what people are interested in, right? It's the images, it's the text, it's the flashy stuff, it's the stuff that has immediate effect for helping disabled people or um, that's going to have a profound effect on humanity right away. So that seems to be like what people are mostly interested in. I could see applications for sure though in science, and I think that's going to get really interesting when people start to just try to try to make sense of a lot of the patterns that are underlying both like physics, mathematically, maybe even philosophically to some extent, using deep learning. That's going to be fascinating, but I think for the most part, it's going to be people are going to public demand and appeal is going to shift it in the area of things that are tangible, accessible, and make life easier for people. And then, kind of the final question I had was with each model having its own unique purpose, um, you're going to definitely see, I think, layers of these systems kind of stacked upon each other. Um, and so you'll have definitely deeper systems that care about things that people won't care about on a daily basis, kind of running things, but then also feeding information through to um, like higher level systems that will then interact, or I guess people will interact with on a daily basis. And so I do think that there will be kind of a flow of information, almost like a filtering effect, where at each level you'll be able to filter um, more complex information into simpler information in a sense. And so you're almost um, digging deeper into the sub substrate, I guess, if you want to call it that, of the world. And so I think each layer can go a little bit deeper. And then if you do have something with, similar to models, training models, you'll have models that can, I think, then inform different systems above them, which will then aggregate all that information, condense it, and then send it even further up until you get something that's hopefully relevant to whatever the end user is after. And so I think through that we'll be able to definitely, I think, see patterns that we haven't seen before on the physical world. We'll be able to kind of make sense of just the mass amount of information that's in the world right now. There's just so much swirling around, and it's going to be interesting because there will be definitely a lot of opportunities for things to go haywire when you have that much, if you have that much codependency between systems, and it's going to require some redundancies and ways to figure that out. But overall, I think it'll help just kind of at least make sense of more things, and the people that really want to dive in are going to be able to use that to know more than ever and kind of amplify understanding of the world. So um, I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up, at least on the information side of things. Uh, yeah, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me. You can either message me or comment or whatever you'd like. I'm happy to chat all this stuff and This is a little bit rambly for the first one. I'm still trying to find my stride, trying to figure out, what to do with this. And so far, I'm just sharing my thoughts and what I find interesting. So I'll try to do a video next week. And until then, take it easy.